I paid for my wife's family vacation, but my sister-in-law excluded me at checkout, expecting me to cover her bill. I made her pay. I never imagined I would feel this depressed while lounging in an upscale Miami Beach resort. A family vacation that was supposed to be unforgettable has turned into a nightmare because of my sister-in-law, Ella 38F. I'm here with my wife, Re 42F, her aging parents 76M and 70F, and Ella. We've been married for 10 amazing years, and I'm already at my wits' end because of Ella's treatment of me just 2 days into this vacation. Over the past 10 years, Re and I have built a pleasant life together. We've both worked hard to reach senior positions at our respective companies. Our success is reflected in our lifestyle. To break the routine of our hectic lives, we take at least 3 large vacations a year along with several weekend trips. Since we decided not to have children, we've made it a point to include Ri's parents in one of our yearly vacations. Over the past 2 years, Ri's mother has found it difficult to travel with her father alone, as his health has been deteriorating. This trip to Miami was especially meaningful because Ri's father had mentioned that he had always wanted to go to Miami, where he and his wife had honeymooned nearly 50 years ago. He spoke of it with such fervor, betraying a fear that this might be his final chance to relive those memories. Given how expensive a week in Miami would be, I turned down his offer to help with the costs. I wanted to do this for them, as they've treated me like their own son for the past 10 years. I can easily afford it, and it was worth every penny to see their happiness. Upon returning to Miami, when Ella asked to join us, our vacation took a very different turn. Ella has always been in a tough financial spot. Unlike Rhea and me, her husband's salary barely covers the necessities for their 3 school-age children. She would often remark that she hadn't been able to afford a real vacation since her honeymoon. Whenever we shared pictures from our trips, she would come up to us directly. This year, she asked to go to Miami. I agreed. Ella's behavior seemed strange from the moment we arrived in Miami. Only a few hours after we checked into our beach resort, Ella suggested that the family take a picture in front of the breathtaking ocean view. To get everyone in the shot, I grabbed my phone to set the timer. She stopped me. "Oh, would you just take the photo for us, Mom, Dad, Ree, and I are the only 4 people we want in it." Her words were like a slap in the face. I said nothing, assuming they might want a picture of their immediate family. However, this was just the beginning. Ella made it a point to exclude me from every restaurant, tourist attraction, and special occasion. She would often say, "Oh, just the 4 of us," or "this one's just for family." I became the official photographer, spending all my time behind the lens instead of creating memories with my wife and her family. Even worse, Ella started sharing these pictures on social media, creating a narrative about a family vacation where I didn't exist. My in-laws would encourage me to join the photos, and Ree would occasionally stress that I was part of the family, but Ella always found a way to sway the situation, ensuring I was once again behind the camera for their ideal family reunion. I felt like nothing more than a walking ATM and personal photographer. I was looking forward to relaxing by the immaculate pool with its stunning ocean view after a long day of sightseeing, but once again Ella made sure I didn't get to enjoy it. As I approached the pool, she asked, "Will you stay out a while? We want a picture with just Mom, Ree, and me." What started as a simple request turned into an hour-long photo session. First, the women posed, followed by a picture of the siblings, then another family-only shot. Every time I tried to join, she came up with a new combination that conveniently left me out. If my presence was such a hassle, I couldn't help but wonder why she had bothered to come on this vacation. The boat ride incident the next day was even more glaring. At the tourist destination, they offered boat rides along the shore. The boats fit 4 people, 2 rows of 2 seats. However, we were 5. Before anyone could suggest a fair seating arrangement, Ella insisted that this setup would be perfect for family photos. She arranged for Ri's parents to sit together in one row and for herself to sit next to Ri in the other. I was left to sit with strangers. The family later bought a memento photo of their boat ride, in which I was awkwardly crammed between strangers, while my wife and her family enjoyed the ride without me. I couldn't help but notice that I was always the one left out, even though I was paying for the entire vacation. Ella never once volunteered to swap places or take turns being the odd one out. It was the same at a fancy seafood restaurant I had been looking forward to for weeks. I had specifically asked for a prime table with an unobstructed view of the sunset at one of Miami's top waterfront restaurants. When we arrived, the hostess led us to a circular table for six perfectly positioned to capture the golden hour light across the ocean. Ri's parents sat across from us, and I had hoped we'd sit together to take in the beautiful view. But because Ella had been added at the last minute, she quickly took a seat next to Ri. Her parents took the best seats, and I was forced into the worst spot. Ella's true colors showed when Ri suggested we rearrange the seating. Ella snapped at her, telling her to stop being so clingy and reminding everyone that this was a family holiday. The dinner only got worse as Ella directed the conversation away from me, focusing on high school escapades, inside jokes, and childhood memories. Every time I tried to contribute, Ella would interrupt and steer the conversation back to familiar ground, making me feel like an outsider at my own table. By the time dessert came, I had stopped trying to engage. The last insult came during our scheduled spa day. I had booked private suites in the resort's luxurious spa for Ella, one for her parents and one for Ri and me. I thought we could all enjoy the spa together, but Ri's father chose to stay behind at the beach because he wasn't feeling well. Ella saw this as an opportunity to isolate me further. She smiled and said, "We need a girls' day at the spa. You should stay with Dad." Once again, she forced me to cancel an event I had organized and paid for, using my father-in-law's illness as leverage to make me look selfish if I objected. Despite not getting the spa experience I had planned, the day turned out better than I expected. I had a meaningful conversation with my father-in-law on the beach, where we connected in a way I had never experienced before. He shared stories about his life and gave me insights into his years of wisdom. Later, I tried to talk to Ri about what had been going on. She admitted that she had noticed how upset I was, but she explained that Ella's actions might not have been intentional. Ri said their father's frequent military deployments during their childhood had affected them, and perhaps Ella was trying to make up for lost family time now that their father's health was declining. I began to question myself. Was I being too sensitive? After all, I was paying for the vacation, so was it wrong to expect to be included? I started to doubt myself. Ella's behavior had been so hurtful. I wondered if I had no right to feel this way. Then I posted about my experience online, and the outpouring of support from others confirmed my feelings. People remarked that Ella's exclusion was deliberate, not an accident. It became clear to me that this wasn't about having the right to be included just because I was paying. It was about basic respect and acknowledgement as part of the family. Ri tried to use their past to justify Ella's behavior, but I saw it for what it was: unacceptable. By the last few days of our trip, the morning before we left, I took Ri aside and confronted her about her passive attitude during the trip. She admitted she had seen what was going on, but insisted that confronting Ella would only create drama and ruin what could be one of their father's final vacations. That explanation made sense, but it felt like another betrayal. Once again, family unity was being sacrificed at the expense of my feelings. Something shifted in me at that moment. I agreed to move on, but in my mind, I was already planning my next move. Ella had enjoyed all the luxury I had provided during the vacation, yet she had treated me like an unwelcome stranger. It was time to remind her exactly what it meant to ignore me as a family member. I decided to take action on the last morning. I arranged for the hotel to separate the bills for the suite and everything else, room service, spa treatments, and poolside cocktails, so that Ella would pay for her own expenses. I paid for my family's portion and waited for the inevitable moment when the bill would be revealed. When Ella saw the bill, her face went pale. She realized she was responsible for the charges and couldn't cover them. After a few failed attempts to pay with her credit card, the transaction was declined. It turned out she had been living beyond her means, confident I would foot the bill. After several minutes of frantic phone calls and a tense conversation, she finally managed to settle the bill barely. At the airport, I had secretly upgraded her parents, and myself to business class. Ella was stuck in economy, and I made sure to let her see us enjoying our luxury seats as she walked past. When we landed, she immediately began a dramatic recounting of how I had humiliated her by denying her the upgrades. Of course, she conveniently left out the part about her constant exclusion of me during the vacation. Her performance didn't fool anyone. Riss' mother had seen enough and stepped in. "Ella, enough," she said. "We don't want to get involved. We saw how you treated him. You had your own plans to sideline him. Now deal with it." Ella's reaction was to accuse me of controlling the family with money. Her anger boiled over, and the situation escalated. Riss' father, who had stayed quiet throughout the trip: "Ella, your brother-in-law has done enough for you. If you can't appreciate it, better keep your mouth shut." With that, the atmosphere shifted. The confrontation ended, and we left for the car. Ella stood alone at the terminal, too proud to ask for a ride, and I didn't offer. I didn't care anymore. When we got back to Riss' parents' house, they both sincerely thanked us for the vacation. Riss' father's embrace spoke volumes more than any words could convey. Everything was validated by that hug. After we got home, Ree and I resumed our routines, avoiding the subject of what had happened until a few days later. Ree finally opened up about Ella's financial problems. Her husband was demanding full reimbursement, as he was furious about how much Ella had spent during the trip. But that's another story. Update: it's been a few months since the Miami vacation debacle, but the echoes of that trip still linger in our family dynamic. The tension between Ella and me hasn't gone away, and while it's quieter now, I can feel it bubbling just beneath the surface. For the most part, Ree and I have returned to our normal routine. We are back to being partners, planning our next vacation, and living our life together in the comfortable bubble we've created over the last decade. But I can't deny that I've changed since that trip. I don't regret confronting Ella the way I did, especially in the end when I made her pay for her own expenses. It was a small but significant victory, and as the weeks passed I could see that Riss' parents had finally begun to acknowledge the cracks in their daughter's behavior. They didn't say anything outright, but there was a certain understanding in the way they interacted with me in the days following the trip. Riss' mother in particular had been more attentive. She began to make small gestures of support, like offering me a second helping at dinner or making sure I had a seat at the table, as if to subtly remind me that I wasn't an outsider. But Ree, ever the peacemaker, still struggled to fully address what had happened. It was almost as though she was stuck in a state of denial, unwilling to admit how deeply hurt I was. She had seen it all unfold in Miami, and yet she still seemed to put her sister's feelings first. One evening, about a week after we returned, Ree and I were sitting on the couch after dinner, sipping wine. I had just finished a particularly grueling week at work, and we were winding down. I could feel a conversation was about to unfold. It was one of those moments where everything in the room feels charged, like you both know there's something unspoken that needs to be addressed. "I've been thinking a lot about the vacation," Ree said, her voice soft. She stared at her wine glass, swirling it absent-mindedly. "About how things went down with Ella." I waited, sensing that she was bracing herself for the conversation. I didn't interrupt, just let the silence hang in the air. "I just want you to know I'm sorry. I know you were hurt, and I should have been more supportive of you. I should have stood up to Ella more." Her words were genuine, but there was still a hesitation in her voice, as though she wasn't fully comfortable confronting the truth of the situation. It took me a moment to process her apology, because a part of me was still waiting for her to fully understand the depth of what had happened. "I appreciate you saying that," I said slowly. "But it's not just about standing up to her. It's about understanding that I'm part of this family too. I was paying for everything, making it all happen. I thought I deserved more than to be treated like an outsider, like I was just some guy who showed up to foot the bill. I wanted to be included in the memories we were making, not just left behind with a camera in my hand." Reen nodded, her eyes glistening with the hint of tears. "I get it now, I really do. I've been reflecting a lot, but it's hard, you know Ella is." I could tell she was struggling to find the right words. I knew that Ree had a complicated relationship with her sister, one that wasn't always easy to navigate. Ella had been the youngest, and in many ways she had always been the baby of the family. Ree had spent most of her life taking care of her, both emotionally and financially. It made sense in a way why Ree was so reluctant to rock the boat. But for me, it was starting to feel like an excuse. I think I'm at the point where I don't want to just go along with things because it's easier. I said, "I want to feel respected, not just tolerated. I've done my part for this family, and I'm not going to let her treat me like that again." Ree's face softened. I know, and I think you are right. You deserve better. I'll talk to her, I will, but I'm going to need some time." "I'm not asking you to fight her battles," I replied, feeling a knot of frustration form in my chest. "I'm just asking for you to stand by me. I don't need you to fix everything, but I do need you to see it for what it is." "I do see it," she said, her voice firming up. I don't know how to handle it all, but I will, I promise." The conversation felt like a small but significant step forward. It wasn't the perfect resolution, but I could tell that Ree was starting to see things more clearly. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but at least we were finally on the same page. Or at least I hoped we were. A few weeks later, the storm finally came. It started with a simple text from Ella, an innocuous message that, in hindsight, was anything but. She asked if Ree and I could meet her for coffee, claiming she wanted to talk. Ree had mentioned that she'd spoken to their parents about the situation, but I hadn't heard anything definitive about how Ella was taking it. I figured I would give Ree the space to deal with it on her own, but when Ella's request came through, I knew it was time to have this conversation head on. We met her at a small cafe near her house, the kind of place where you could tell the servers knew her by name. It wasn't lost on me that the meeting had the feel of an ambush. Ree and I sat down first, and Ella arrived about 15 minutes later, looking a little too calm for someone who was about to have a heart-to-heart with her brother-in-law. "Hey, guys," she said, offering an overly cheerful smile. She slid into the seat across from us, her eyes flicking nervously between Ree and me. There was a tense moment before she spoke again. "I know we've had some issues lately." I leaned forward, my arms crossed. "I'm listening," I said, my voice measured. Ella sighed as though preparing for something difficult. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you on the trip. I mean, I knew I was being a little, difficult, but I didn't think it was that bad. I thought I was just having fun with my family." I could hear the faintest note of defensiveness in her voice, but I pushed it aside. At least she was acknowledging it. "I get it," I said, keeping my tone even. "But fun is one thing, and excluding someone repeatedly is something else entirely. I'm not your servant. I'm not here just to pay for everything and then watch you have a good time while I'm left behind." Ella shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I never meant for you to feel that way," she said, though there was a hint of disbelief in her tone. "I guess I just wanted some time with my sister. You know how it is, right?" I glanced at Ree, who was uncharacteristically quiet, her hands folded tightly on the table. It was clear that Ella was still holding on to this notion that her behavior had been justified by her need for time with Ree, but I wasn't buying it anymore. "I understand wanting time with family," I said, my voice hardening. "But that doesn't give you the right to disregard me as if I don't exist. You are the one who kept pushing me out of every picture, every meal, every moment that should have included me. Don't act like I'm the one overreacting here." Ella's face reddened, and for the first time, "Okay," she said after a long silence. "I get it. I'm sorry. I—" The apology felt half-hearted, but it was better than nothing. Still, I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a few words. "I don't need your apology," I said bluntly. "I need you to change. I need you to start treating me like I matter in this family, not just when it's convenient for you." Ree was silent throughout the exchange, her gaze downcast. She hadn't said a word, but I could see the pain on her face. It was clear that this conversation was just the tip of the iceberg. Ella's attempt to smooth things over was met with a cold reception from me, and we left the coupe soon after. But as we walked to the car, Ree and I didn't say much to each other. It was as if the weight of everything that had happened, everything that still wasn't resolved, had settled over us. "I'm glad you said something," Ree finally murmured as we got into the car. "I had to," I said, my voice quiet. "But it's not over yet." And it wasn't. The aftermath of that conversation dragged on for weeks. Ella tried to make things right, but it was clear that the damage had been done. Things between us were never the same after that trip. Ree and I continued to work through the fallout, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted permanently. It wasn't just about money or the vacation, it was about the way Ella saw me, the way she had taken me for granted all those years. For me, the family dynamic would never quite return to what it had been before. And that was fine. I wasn't the same person anymore, and maybe, just maybe, that was for the best.